All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Melanin Margin, the weekly chat show where conversations about race are never off the table. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams.
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
So let's get into this week's conversation. Daquon, what is hot on the table this week?
Well, first up, we have this thing out of People magazine. The author of the article is Nicholas Wright, so we'll have that link down below for you to read on. But the gist of it is there's been some trouble brewing between Billy Porter and Harry Styles. So in an interview, Billy Porter addressed an issue that he had with Vogue after Harry Styles was featured on the front cover in a dress. Last year, of course, you know that Harry Styles was the first man to ever have a solo cover on Vogue, and he graced the issue in a lace trim dress and tuxedo jacket. But the interview Billy Porter did with the Sunday Times, he said he had an issue with how Harry Styles was being credited and praised for breaking gender norms because, according to Porter, he was the one who was doing it first. And Porter said that I changed the whole game, end quote. And went on to say that I personally changed the whole game. And that is not ego, that is just fact. I was the one doing it, and now everybody is doing it. And he goes on to finally say that I feel that the fashion industry has accepted me because they have to. I'm not necessarily convinced, and here's why. I created the conversation about non binary fashion, and yet Vogue still put Harry Styles, a straight white man in a dress, on their cover for the first time. And, I was really interested in this article because I wanted to know, like, do you think Billy Porter is justified in his grievances towards Harry Styles getting credited for breaking these gender norms?
Okay, so first thing first, let's make one thing clear. This first of all, it kind of sounds like this interview, like it feels like one of those things where you're talking with your girlfriend, sipping on some wine, going
Mm-hmm.
like, "Girl, you know I changed the game when I went out there with my dress on." You know what I'm saying? It kind of gives me that feeling of like I don't think Billy Porter was like really really aware of what he was saying because
Mm-hmm.
even though he said it's not ego, it's coming across as ego, very much so in that regard. Because, first and foremost, he was not the first person to break gender norms. I mean, let's not forget Alex Newell, RuPaul, Prince, people dating back
Sylvester.
generations. Huh?
Sylvester.
Sylvester, Grace Jones. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I think that it feels a little bit problematic in a way for him to kind of just go off and say, "Oh yeah, I personally changed this. Like nobody ever did this for me. I'm the one opening up the conversations." It's like in this case, you might be one of the people who helped bring that conversation to mainstream. But I do think it is a little arrogant to say that I was the one who just created this whole narrative of non-binaryism. And like, no, baby, that's been around for literally generations, literally centuries. Like that aspect of gender expression has not just suddenly came out of the woodwork. And so,
Right.
but I will say that there, like, even a broken clock is right twice a day kind of situation. So even though I didn't agree with a lot of what he was saying about that part, I do believe that one of the things he did make very clear was that fact of him saying that a white cis man was put on the cover. Now, again, we don't know Harry Styles' sexuality; he doesn't really talk about it, so
Right.
we can't assume that he's straight. And I'm not here to debate about that. That's his business, not mine. But I do think there is a conversation there about white people, white men especially, being put on the forefront of movements and being seen as, oh yeah, no one's ever done this before. This white person did it. Like when Caitlyn Jenner became the first trans woman of the year and stuff like that. Like it's a lot of forefronting of whiteness and kind of erasing the black people or the people of color that have basically trailblazed the way for us. Does that make sense, Daquon?
Yeah, I think that, it's one of those things that sure, give Billy Porter his flowers. He
Yeah,
has done some things for, breaking gender norms and stuff like
yeah,
that, but like
no doubt.
saying he's the first, like, I don't know about that.
No, ma'am, I
um,
don't.
but I do think like this larger conversation of how we kind of center whiteness and more cis presenting folk within the queer and non-binary spaces is an important conversation to
Yeah.
have, because I was even thinking about it. There was like this movie on Stonewall that came out like a couple years ago, and like it had some, you know, white cis man just like being the first one to throw a brick at Stonewall, even though like
Mm-mm.
if we look at the history, like it wasn't no white cis mask presenting man doing that. Like it
Yeah.
just wasn't. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, I do think that there is this notion that like there is this comfortability with whiteness and cisness that more people are comfortable with when it comes to non-binary fashion, rather than leaning on people who identify and publicly identify as non-binary.
Yeah, I think that that is absolutely the case. It's like it kind of goes back to that conversation where like a lot of people, a lot of straight white cis people get so much praise for doing things that are so out of pocket, like Tu Wong Fu with the three straight men playing drag queens and being gay, whatever case may be. And then it was what's his name, Danish Girl, the guy who played in Danish Girl, I forgot what his name is.
Oh yeah,
He played in Fantastic Beasts, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that actor getting that praise for doing that and just being a trans woman. I mean, he couldn't possibly understand and blah blah blah. And you know, that's just so amazing that he's doing that. And I'm kind of like, but there are actual trans women who've lived that experience. Right. And they aren't able to get those roles. And so I think it opens up that conversation really deeply about, if we look at it like it is almost exclusively white, almost not completely, but we have been making waves. I want to make that clear, you know, like we have been making waves in that regard. But unfortunately, even nowadays, it's still white cis people that are oftentimes put to the forefront and oftentimes put to the, you know, they're the standard. And we're just kind of like, you know, once they do it, it's cool. Like, you know, Machine Gun Kelly painting his nails and stuff like that or whatever. Like, oh, he's edgy, whatever. But gay Black people or people of LGBTQIA people of color do that exact same thing and called a faggot, get beat up for it. You know what I'm saying? But Machine Gun Kelly does it. It's cool. It's hot. It's whatever. He can break gender norms, and Harry Styles can break those norms because even though we may not know his sexuality, he is not publicly out from this day right here publicly out as non-binary within the community in that regard. So it is about. I think there is a level of that conversation of like, you know, you want to see people who identify with the community representing the community.
And so I have a follow-up question to that. Like you brought that up. Like, do you think it's then people who are outside of the community, their responsibility to kind of give up these roles as, you know, groundbreakers to allow more room for people within the community?
I absolutely do. I think that it's been a problem for a long time, and people are talking about, well, people are just getting mad now and this and the fourth. It's kind of like, it's always been a problem. Like, you know, straight white people or straight people playing gay roles and playing the drag queens and writing the stories about gay people and trans people, whatever. It's always been a problem. Now, that's not to say that you can't write from an experience you don't directly understand. There's plenty of people who do that. But there is something to be said about not paying homage or not paying respect to those who allowed you to do those things, appreciating that culture, appreciating what you're using, because it oftentimes becomes these white people or these white straight men most of the time that get celebrated and respected and get all the accolades and money and all that stuff from an experience that they essentially plagiarized. And don't like, oh yes, I wrote this myself. I didn't have any help. I just did it myself. It's kind of like, no, you had people in your life. You had people online. You probably had all kinds of different aspects of that you use to help build this character or build the story that you have. And I think that there is something to be said about a lot of these people in those positions of power not allowing for space for us to critique what they're doing. Because a lot of times they'll be sitting there being like, yeah, I wrote this trans character and you should celebrate me because I'm showing trans people. It's kind of like, no, but the way you're showing them is not okay. And when trans
Right.
people speak up about it, it's like, well, you should be happy that these people are putting you in that regard. It's like, no, it's not just about white people or straight people giving up that space. It's also about them opening that space and being able and being open to say, okay, listen, we're not perfect. We don't know everything about this experience. So we're going to ask someone from that experience how to navigate this story or navigate this character in a way in which that could be respectful. Am I making sense there?
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree. It's one of those things that I think it is powerful in a situation like that. Like if this white cis person got um this great opportunity to really, bring out queer expression on a main stage platform, like it would be very powerful for that person to be like, you know what, I appreciate this offer. However, there are X, Y, and Z people who would do a much better job than me who actually live that experience. But I also think that it's very important for us to like hold these like industries and like larger organizations accountable as well, where it's like, you know, they should already know what type of queer and non-binary talent is out there and be searching for them to be on the first and foremost when they have all of these groundbreaking or like queer expression type things in terms of like fashion or movies or entertainment in general.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm so glad you brought that up, specifically that part about opening up that space and then also letting those people in that space specifically. I think that there is enough white cis roles out there for white cis people to take. Let's just say that
Yeah.
first. There is ample room for white cis straight men and women to occupy spaces on television, movie, film, animation, everywhere. There is ample room for it. So I don't think it's enough to just say, and I actually want to retract a little bit of what I said earlier. I don't think it's so much about, oh, they should just give respect. I think honestly and truly step off,
Right.
honestly. And not necessarily in especially in the acting stuff and the acting roles and those bigger like the modeling covers and stuff like that, is because even though I understand that you might really appreciate that experience, you might really appreciate this this aspect of that situation, it's like, there are no space, there's almost virtually no spaces for black queer people and or queer people in general to occupy those spaces, because y'all are already there. And so if y'all are all, if white cis people are always in those spaces and we don't have any room there, if there are only, like, let's say like this, and like theoretically speaking, there are 100 roles, right? And about
Hmm.
10 of those roles are for LGBTQI identifying people. But there's still 90 roles out there for white cis straight people. And so when you have white cis straight people occupy not only the 90% and the 90 roles out there, but then say, well, I still want that one too. Even though I don't, that's not my experience, I still want that one too. Even though there are black gay people or are people of color that are LGBTQI identifying, trying to occupy that space, saying, hey, this is the only role I can play. This is the
Yeah.
only role that's in this whatever situation or whatever movie or whatever TV show. This is the only space that I can get in. And I'm trying to get in, but you're blocking my path because you're jumping in.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that, this is a larger idea of like, how do we portray queer people within just like media in general? And I think a lot of times it's for, non-queer comfortability. It's like, all right, we're going to take like baby steps. Like, here's somebody that y'all are comfortable with. And so
Yeah.
that's how we're going to start this conversation about queer expression. But in reality, when we see those types of baby steps, it's always like, all right, well, y'all got this. So like just hold on. Like change is going to come. Y'all just need to be wait and be patient. And it's like, no, you then become stagnant because it's like, all right, we took this step. So like we're good for a while until like there's this big uprise or big like social unrest. And then it's like, all right, like let's take another little step.
Yeah, and I think honestly and truly there are ways in which you can respect the culture. There are ways in which you can pay homage to some people, especially in like the writing aspects of it. But I do think there is something to be said about people being aware and people being like being socially open for those conversations and saying that, hey, listen, I wrote this story about this person, I wrote this story about this experience, and I'm going to actually ask people within that experience, if my story is respectful, if it's socially, if it's not furthering negative stereotypes and negative stigmas, and if it is doing that, make the necessary corrections.
Exactly. If you have a production and the entire thing is white and cis and or even straight, like white cis straight people writing these stories, and that's the people who are getting the bag off of queer and Black stories, there's a problem there.
Exactly. So let's shift gears a little bit here. In an article on Yahoo Entertainment written by Susie Barn, Dave Chappelle continues to use the Netflix controversy and transgender community as a punchline. Comments the comedian made about trans people in his special The Closer or Closure sparked backlash earlier this month. And it's far from over. At Thursday night stand-up show in New Orleans, which co-headlined the pot stirrer Joe Rogan, he poked fun at the canceled culture amid the backlash again. He also made new trans jokes and said, "I haven't been in this much trouble in my life," said Chappelle, 48, who quipped at his show, according to Rolling Stone, which noted that he went on to spend his tour roasting the PC culture. Local outlet NOLA.com reports Chappelle bragged to the sold-out show of 7,000. "In the middle of me being canceled, we broke the attendance record." And at the Smoothie King Center, where the arena took place, Chappelle, who now infamously said in his latest special for the streamer that gender is a fact, and went on to defend Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling amid allegations of her being transphobic. And he told the crowd this has been the worst 3 weeks of his life after being accused of being transphobic and homophobic. However, the star, who is also had the support of Netflix, has stood by his remarks. So I just want to ask you, Daquon, I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, but do you think he should be canceled, or his special should be taken down?
So yeah, we talked about this before in terms of like cancel culture, and like I think that in this realm of just like what Dave Chappelle said and like everything like that, like there needs to be some type of accountability. Like, we know canceling, how it's just like, oh, oh, you're canceled, like we're not gonna like watch you anymore, and then like you give it a couple weeks and then like they're back, nothing really happens. But like actual accountability, because at the end of the day, like sure, it's just jokes, but these jokes are the same jokes that get people killed, period.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that I think it's really annoying to me. It kind of frustrates me that people are like so surprised by him. Like that's what really gets me. Is people like people are like, "Oh my, Dave Chappelle, homophobic and transphobic." I'm like, have you seen the Chappelle show? Have you seen any of his specials? This is not a new issue for Dave Chappelle. Not even close to being a new issue. So first and foremost, when I even heard about this, I was really kind of, I wasn't shocked at all. I was just kind of shocked. I was shocked that people were shocked. Because I was like, what are y'all really that surprised that he's doing this? He's a black straight man at the top of his game. Do you really think he's not homophobic and transphobic? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because unfortunately, sadly, the truth is, in the Black community, we know that there's a lot of transphobia and homophobia, and it doesn't change because of your status or power. There's a lot of it there. So when I hear a straight Black man being homophobic or transphobic, I'm not surprised about it. I don't think he should be canceled because he can't be. Let's just be 100% there.
He's Dave Chappelle.
He's Dave Chappelle. He's not going to be canceled. Let's get that all the way out the way. There's still people who are listening to Michael Jackson's music and R. Kelly's music, and they know what they got going on. So let's not act like these homophobic and transphobic comics are going to get Dave Chappelle canceled. So that's already off the table right there. But as far as the taking his special down, I do think that what I think is really frustrating about this whole situation is that people are so focused on getting his special taken down and rioting against Netflix and and getting all mad. And it's like, honestly, we're not attacking the real issue here. The issue is not Dave Chappelle. The issue is Dave Chappelle's thought process. The same thought process that goes through the minds of many, many cis straight Black men. In this thought process of being the homophobic comments, the transphobic comments, that is what I wish people would be attacking, because it really feels like, oh, well, y'all should take the special down because it's this and then the fourth. And it's kind of like, it's baby, it's not happening. That's a losing battle. Netflix and already cast that. Dave Chappelle didn't cast Netflix check. He didn't already cast it. So they're not about to waste their money. Let's just be 100 there. So it really, I wish that we would focus more so on that thought process and really talk about that, because I think that the rhetoric he is using is what's problematic here. That's the problem. And I think that what really makes me mad about it is that nobody's really holding him accountable for that. They're just, a lot of people, the conversation becomes, you're transphobic in a discussion. It's kind of like, no. And again, I'm not saying that it is the responsibility of the trans community or any community that has been hurt by anybody's comments to correct those comments. Let's be real like that. It is that person's job to take accountability. But like I said, I do think that it's something to be said about the society not holding people accountable for their actions and saying that we're not going to sit here and just allow you to do these things. This is problematic because, yes, Dave Chappelle is not out there hurting trans Black women. He's not physically, at least I don't know. He's at least I don't know for myself. But I mean, I would think, I haven't heard anything, but he's not personally himself going out and killing Black trans women. But the rhetoric that he's using is what's getting a lot of Black trans women killed. Not saying that white trans women or other trans women aren't getting aren't getting backlash as well, but it's oftentimes marginally. We already know that it affects Black trans women more when it comes to those situations. That's just a fact. And I think that it's so problematic for him to be like, oh, gender is a fact, and it's like, yeah, gender is a fact. Gender is a construct. Like, that's a fact. He's saying, like, he was trying to be nasty about it, like gender is a fact. It's like, yeah, it's a factual social it's a factual social construct. It absolutely is. It is absolutely not. It is absolutely that. So I was kind of, it was weird that he was trying to say that to kind of come across like, oh yeah. I think what he meant to say was sex is a fact. That's what I think he was trying to get at, but he just used the wrong term. But it was like, girl, you kind of went so far right, you kind of went back left a little bit. But it's just like, you're basically saying, yes, my non-binary gender identity is a fact. My pronouns are a fact. Yeah, thank you. You know what I'm saying? But, all jokes aside, I just really think that there's a problem with accountability there. I think there's a problem with us not holding that thought process and fuck that. Like, fuck the Dave Chappelle shit. Like, fuck him. Like, we're talking about the process that he was going through in his mind. We're not talking about his, because once again, Dave Chappelle's going to be Dave Chappelle. He's going to be who he is. I wish the conversation wasn't so much about, I wish it was more like, Dave Chappelle said these things, and these are why these things are wrong. And we want to make sure to open that dialogue so that people don't continuously reaffirm and continue to perpetuate that negativity. Am I making sense here, Daquon?
Yeah, and I remember watching the Black Queer Town Hall with Bob the Drag Queen and Peppermint, and they had like really great points all on the Dave Chappelle special, but just like really focusing on like impact versus intentions. Like, Dave Chappelle's intentions does not matter in what he was saying. Like, it doesn't matter what he was trying to say, or, he even like mentioned in the comedy special how he had like this trans friend that he helped, and like they would joke about things back and forth. And so like she unfortunately passed away, but he was kind of using his trans friend as a way of like dismissing any transphobic remarks. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, regardless of what relationship you had with that person, even if you would tell these types of jokes and they were fine with it, they're not here anymore. They are not here to like defend themselves or like have that type of rapport, as well as just like, even if that one person is fine with it, we have an entire community who's not. We have an entire community whose lives are at stake because of the jokes that you tell. Because then you use transness as a punchline. Transness is not something that is serious enough for us to, take seriously. And so people who are listening to that special are then using that rhetoric to fuel their transphobia, which causes even more trans harm, trans people getting killed. And so like that's exactly what you were saying about like the rhetoric is what we really need to be focusing on, because like Dave Chappelle got money. He's going to be fine. Like
Yeah, like,
if
yeah.
even
And I want to
if like,
clarify real quick, Daquon. I just want to say,
yeah,
when I said fuck him, I'm not saying I don't know him personally, but what I'm saying is that fuck that aspect of the conversation. Like, we're not
right.
canceling Dave Chappelle. That's what I want to clarify that a little bit. But go ahead, Daquon.
Right, like even if we took the special off of Netflix, like Dave, like you said, Dave Chappelle got the check cashed already.
Yeah.
Even if like Netflix was like, all right, we're going to need to recall some of that coin, like he still has a lot of money and he can still sell out shows
He ain't
regardless.
pressed. He ain't pressed.
He's not pressed. So we need to really focus on that rhetoric and deconstructing that rhetoric and making sure that people know, hey, this is not okay. Like you cannot be saying these types of things and thinking that like it's okay to perpetuate these systems of harm.
I do think that I really want to go back to what you were saying about that trans woman that he was quote unquote friends with. Let's stop using people as monoliths. Let's stop doing that. Because just because you have a black friend does not absolve you from racism. Just because you have a trans friend does not excuse you from transphobia. So let's stop using those personal relationships as a means of representing the entire community. That one trans woman that you were friends with, that one trans woman who quote unquote understood your humor, yeah, she might think that was funny. She might have thought that was okay. And hence what I'm saying, she, not them, not all of those people. No, she did. That one trans woman, you were able to make those jokes with her. If I was a white person and I had a black friend and I made racist jokes and he's like, ha ha ha, hilarious, you are so crazy, girl. And like, that was cute or whatever. But I went to a public stage and did it and people are going off on me. I can't use the excuse, well, my black friend told me it was okay. No, baby, that's not how that works. And so I think that it was kind of like, I think that a lot of people who were on the defense of it were using that particular relationship as a way to defend him. He can't be transphobic because he had a trans friend. And it's kind of like, first of all, we don't know how personal that relationship was. They might just know each other in passing. So let's not act like, you know what I mean, that we know that. And even if it was a really close and really close-knit relationship, the reality is trans people, black people, she spoke for herself, her energy, what she needed from you, what she would tolerate from you. But unfortunately, the greater diaspora does not. And I think that was the problem that we're not getting on. I think that's the problem that people were not understanding, where they were like, I mean, he has a trans friend, so it's not a problem. It's kind of like, no, baby, that's not how that works. That's not the way to protect him. That's not action. Am I making sense here, Daquon?
Yeah, and I think even more beyond that, like you have to think about the place and time. Like if I told a joke to you, like in some personal space, like that joke is between us. Like, yeah, sure, it may be problematic and there needs to be things that would be like addressed. But in that instance, it's between two people who understand each other. They understand intentions and stuff like that. So, you know, address it, but like it's not the biggest of issues to be addressed. Dave Chappelle has a huge platform, platform. And so the minute he tells that joke on a special, it goes from being between two people who understand each other to millions of people.
Yes. I think that, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I think there's such a difference. I think that Dave Chappelle, even though he is incredibly successful, I think that he's forgotten his reach. I think that he's not aware of the responsibility he has. Because I use this metaphor a lot, but I'm like, imagine if Adolf Hitler never killed a single person himself during the Holocaust. Let's just say, just for argument's sake, he never killed a single person during the Holocaust, but he ordered people to be killed. Even though he didn't pull the trigger, his influence still gives him responsibility over that person's life. He was still responsible or responsible for the influence that caused that person to be killed. And on a much smaller scale, it's the same regard of like, if me and you talk to each other and I'm like, hey, Daquon, we're going to kill this girl. And we're like, okay, we're going to kill this person. And I'm like, okay, she's going to be here at this time and at this place. And I'm going to unlock the doors that you're able to do it. Even though you're the person who goes in there and shoots her and kills her, stabs her, whatever, I still helped you do it by saying this is what we're going to do and making ways for it to happen. And so if we were in a court of law, both of us will be going to prison for different reasons. Yes, you're going to jail for the actual murder, but I'm going to jail for the mastermind aspect of it. And so I think that that's where in this conversation, to bring it back home, it's like with Dave Chappelle, yes, Dave Chappelle is not actually out there killing Black trans women. But the people that he is using this rhetoric around, the millions of people that he's reaching, the same Black people who need that, who want that confirmation from another powerful Black man to say, oh yeah, I'm right in believing that that's a man, so I'm going to kill that man. You are not responsible for that person going out and committing an atrocious act against a trans person, but you are responsible for the influence you did on having that perpetuated.
Right. And let's just go ahead and move on from a transphobic Black man to a homophobic Black man. It's probably transphobic too, let's be honest. Let's talk about Lil Boosie. So Boosie has a long history with saying problematic and homophobic things, but in this article by Kyle Eustace, which again we'll have linked down below, it goes into a lot more detail about a little feud between Boosie and Lil Nas X. So the basics of the story for you to understand, Boosie has a long history of like going off on Lil Nas X and going off on his homophobic rants and stuff like that. But more recently, Lil Nas X, being like the Twitter troll that he is, was on Instagram Live, and he joked that like he had this collaboration with Boosie on Live, and Boosie just went off. He was just so furious, and he had this profanity-laced rant that he had on Twitter. I'm not going to repeat it because it was rough, but you can find it, of course. It's still on Twitter. But basically, Boosie was just like spewing all of this hate towards Lil Nas X and all of this profanity. And then, of course, Lil Nas X fans came to his defense, but also his father, Robert Stanford, on Twitter said, how the hell you a gangster rapper promoting drugs, gun violence, degrading women, and getting high every video, and you're talking about you're for the kids. And later on, Nas was like, all right, I'm gonna leave Boosie alone. It's boring. Like, I'm not gonna play with it anymore. So I wanted to ask you, do you think Lil Nas X should have even given Boosie the time of day?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I just think, and it hurt my feelings so bad when I saw him do that thing. He said, yeah, me and Boosie got I got a collaboration going, because I was like, damn. Because I was like, I understand Lil Nas X's position of being like, hey, I'm trying to make light of some things. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to make it something bigger than what it is. He doesn't like me, but it's fine. I'll make a joke about it. I get the thought process behind it. I just wish he didn't. I really, really wish he didn't even engage with Lil Boosie, because I wanted Lil Boosie to stay irrelevant. Like, you know what I mean? Because there is no power. There is no power quite like there is no, it just to look at somebody and say, baby, I'm not bothered. Like, there's no power. Like, there is no kind of power like being unbothered by somebody. You know what I mean? Because apathy is worse than hate. Apathy is worse than engagement. Like, if Lil Nas X didn't respond at all, like, Boosie would still be saying his shit, but he would be saying it by himself. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it just really, it kind of, like I said, I get why he did it. And I'm glad that he stopped it after he saw that kind of, the whole Boosie going like, yeah, you F, whatever, with all the stuff he said. Yeah, I like how he said, I'm bored with this. I'm not gonna engage this anymore. And I'm glad he stopped it then. I just really wish that Lil Nas would have just not even engaged at all. Because it just would have been so much sweeter to see Lil Boosie just mad for no reason. Just to see him mad at Lil Nas X and Lil Nas X is just living his gay life. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really was like, dang, like if you just let him do what he does, because the reality is Lil Boosie, no matter what the freak we say, is not about to change his rhetoric and not about to change his thought process. He's like an old ass man. He's not about, I mean, when he's 40 something, I mean, well, that's not old, but but like he's clearly set in his ways and clearly not trying to open up the discussion, not trying to open up the narrative, not trying to actually engage in a thought-provoking way. He's very much so one of them people who's like sitting on there, rocking on his chair, like them gays still don't know what they're doing. He's very much so that kind of old dog, not learning new tricks kind of thing. So I just think it was kind of like, for me, it was like a little bit discouraging because I was like, dang, like Lil Nas, like, don't let these people mess with you. But I mean, again, I'm not Lil Nas X. I don't know what it's like to be on that level. And so I guess maybe it probably got to him eventually, because I mean, it ain't no up but so long but so much a person can take. So maybe it was his way of trying to make light of it to kind of heal himself a little bit. Like, let me make it a joke so maybe I can feel a little bit better about it. And then he saw the backlash from it and saw Lil Boosie's reaction, was like, oh, we not playing. He really don't fuck with me. Like, oh, he really trying to, be out here. I don't want the negativity in my life. So I don't know. What do you think, Daquon?
I think I'm kind of indifferent to like Nas giving the time of day. I kind of disagree in terms of like Boosie is irrelevant. I think that if you think of who Lil Boosie is, like if you are a Black person from the South, you know a Lil Boosie song. If you ever go to a Black party, especially a Black Greek party, you're going to hear some Boosie being played. And like even more recently, like Boosie appeared on like The Breakfast Club and stuff like that. So Boosie still got a platform. There's still like, I think similarly to like Dave Chappelle, like I couldn't care less about Boosie in this situation. Like he's going to have that same homophobic rhetoric, whatever. But I do think that like Nas kind of like stroking the fire a little bit does kind of give us more of a platform to like have these conversations about the homophobia that is perpetuated in the Black community, especially by Black male rappers. And I think that like knowing Lil Nas X, like he is Gen Z to like the max. Like he's young, he grew up with the internet, and it's one of those things like he knows how to use the internet to get on people's nerves. And so I think that like it was less of just like it's like getting to me a little bit, and more just like I just want to mess with this man. Like he's going to have this like homophobic rhetoric, whatever, but like I just want to get under his skin even more.
I get that. I understand. Like I said, I understand it. It may not be that. It may not be that. For me, it was so much. For me, it just felt so much more powerful for him to just not even be bothered. Like he was just so at a different level, because yes, Lil Boosie is relevant in the sense that he is still having a platform. But on the scale of him versus Lil Nas X in a whole different league right now. You know what I'm saying? Like Lil Boosie is irrelevant to Lil Nas X is what I was saying. Like in that regard. Like where Lil Nas X is in his career, Lil Boosie is not. And so I think that to me, it was like, I just really wanted that power of like seeing Lil Nas X be like, bitch, who Lil Boosie? Like I really wanted the Mariah Carey energy of like people ask him about it, being like, I don't know her. And I just like the smile. Who is that again? I don't know her. And I guess that was what I wanted from it. I understand what you mean, though. As Lil Nas X's character is very much so that troll and kind of being a little bit like, okay, you fuck with me, I'm gonna fuck with you a little bit too. So I get what I get the intentions behind it. I just wish that it didn't open. I wish that it didn't put Boosie up more. Because every time Lil Nas X engages with Boosie, it keeps Boosie relevant. It keeps Boosie. Right. Let me rephrase. It keeps Boosie trending. That's what I mean. It keeps him at the top, and it keeps people going. And people who have that like-minded view, like Lil Boosie, they kind of go, oh yeah, I agree with him because of this and that and that. So it does that. So it's kind of like giving ignorance a larger platform in a way. Why? Because I hate to say it, but like even with Lil Nas X even giving Boosie a certain moment of saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a collaboration out with him, maybe some of Lil Nas X's fans might have gone to Boosie's page to see, whatever. And even if they're not gonna follow him or whatever, that's still giving Boosie more traction. more trending. His music's probably gonna let me listen to his music and see if he's anywhere as good as Lil Nas X or whatever it could be. Not saying that's what's happening, but I'm just saying that those are things that could result from Lil Nas X even giving any kind of engagement to it. Because I do think that, once again, just like I said with Dave Chappelle, fuck that trying to cancel that person. Because Lil Boosie's always Lil Boosie. Dave Chappelle can always be Dave Chappelle. Fuck that. Like, let's stop doing that. But let's focus on the fact of the larger issue here. In the Black community, homophobia is rampant, especially in the Black cis male rapper community. It is incredibly prevalent, which brings up that topic. And it's like, Boosie is one thing, but Boosie represents a lot of the mindsets that many rappers have. And it really baffles me how conservative Black male rappers suddenly become when gay people are displaying their sexuality. Because if you look at Lil Nas X's video and you go to look at Lil Boosie's video, and let's say T.I., because T.I. got a lot to say too about Lil Nas X too, but T.I. and all these people, and Jordan Lucas, I think, said something about Lil Nas X a while back. But like, if you look at some of these rappers' videos, especially Lil Boosie and T.I., and you look at how women are portrayed in those videos, and you look at how sexual it is and all of that good stuff, where is it for the kids then? Where's that same energy there? Why are you suddenly so conservative? And T.S. Madison said something I thought that was really powerful. She said, it's not so much Lil Nas X being gay that's the problem. Lil Boosie and T.I. don't give a fuck about him being gay. That's not the issue. The issue is Lil Nas X is no longer, Black gay people are no longer your hairdressers only. They're no longer writing just your lyrics and getting you glammed up and then going back in the background. You're here, and gay people were here for you. So it was kind of like, I'm not bothered by them. But now gay people are not only eye level with you and on the same playing field, but they're also elevating even higher than you. So I don't think it's so. And she was in TSNI, so I thought this was so powerful, because she was like, I don't think it has anything to do with Lil Nas X being gay. I think that's definitely a factor of it, but I just think it's more of them being angry that this person is sharing their space now and doing even better than them, or being almost at the same level as them. Right. It's almost like an envy to it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and it's one of those things, like, you can tell because, like, they're just trying to find any kind of throwaway, like, reason for their hatred. Like, they're literally trying to find anything, like, oh, it's for the kids. And it's like, they don't actually care. Like, T.S. Madison on an interview with The Breakfast Club pointed out, like, that hypocrisy of Boosie being like, oh, it's for the kids. But Boosie was the same person who hired a woman to sexually assault his underage son, which is just like, if you were for the kids, then like you wouldn't be paying some overage woman to have sex with your underage son. Like, that's weird, that's problematic. But like you said, I do think that's pedophilia. It's illegal. But I do think that like, I agree in terms of like, it's this bigger issue, and I just think that it is like this kind of jealousy, or, well, it's like more than jealousy, but jealousy is the word that I have for it right now.
I think the root of it is definitely in homophobia, obviously, but I do think that the larger thing is that I really think, and when T.S. Madison pointed out, I thought it was just so powerful, because I was like, it's the truth. Because when we were a joke on TV, like, oh, honey, yes, like, when we're the gay neighbor, we're the one that your girlfriend talks to on the TV shows like Martin and blah, blah, and all the other shows, that when we're just like, honey, all of this, and we're just doing that, and we don't have as much power as you, it's kind of like, okay, you're cute, like, you could be the hairdresser, we're not bothered by you, like, you're not on my level, so I don't have to worry about you. I think the reason why Lil Boosie is so vocal all of a sudden, why T.I. has suddenly become so vocal about not liking gays outwardly like this, is because of the fact that now that Lil Nas X, we're no longer in the shadows now. Gay people are in your fucking face now. We have TV shows, RuPaul's Drag Race. We have a whole channel that's getting bigger. We have our own award shows. We're starting to see way more gay people on television and movies and stuff like that. And now you're hearing the homophobia more rampantly, because before it was like, the gays are in the closet. They're in the back. They don't have to talk about them because they're there. We're here now. They're not even. We weren't in their eyes, in white cis people and black cis people and cis people in general, straight people, we were never here. We were never on the same level as them because we could only, it was almost like we capped out. We cap out at a certain level. Like in their minds, it's like the highest they can get is being some kind of joke, like RuPaul. When back in the day before RuPaul got RuPaul's Drag Race, we'll just call RuPaul a joke. That's not really. It's funny because it's a man in a dress kind of thing, right? Or like the cap out being like, well, a gay person can probably be a makeup artist to a Cardi B, but they can't be Cardi B. Do you see what I'm saying? They can be the dancers for Beyonce, but Beyonce is still in the forefront. And so I think that what the problem is that Lil Boosie was like, Lil Boosie don't give a fuck about gay people like that. He's mad that Lil Nas X is on his level and higher. He's selling records. He's in your face. He is unapologetically black and queer and not hiding about it. And that burns a hole in Lil Boosie and T.I. because they're like, we the straights, we deserve, we need to be at that level. We're at that level. They can't be here with us. And it's almost like they're angry that Lil Nas X is like, oh no, bitch, I'm not only here, but I'm almost as good, if not bigger than you.
Right. Like Lil Nas X is at this moment way more relevant than Boosie can ever dream to be. And I think like adding on, I think that even more than that, I think that this is more just like a theory that I'm working with. But I do have this theory that a lot of straight black men are afraid that gay men are going to do to them what they do to women in terms of making them like this sexual object. Like, I think a lot of it really came, when Nas had, male backup dancers and like had like more sexual being on stage rather than just like this kind of, he's gay, but it's also like you don't see anything sexual. But like as he's opening up his sexuality, I feel like black men are afraid of being like, oh, well, like I don't want to be looked at like a sexual object like I do to black women. And I think that like that's also working in their heads a little bit.
Oh my gosh, you really hit the nail on the head right there. That I didn't even think of it from that perspective. Like the idea that the fear is because it always is like the idea of what do people say all the time? The feminization of the black man and blah, 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 whatever. And it's kind of like
the emasculation.
Thank you. That's what like demasculation of the black man. It's kind of like, now that I think about it, you think so it's partially that patriarchy coming through too, where it's like, now that a gay black person is on the forefront, we're seeing gay black men be the background, and we actually see the gay black men being the video vixens in Lil Nas X's videos and being like the sexual object or the person to be looked at as like, oh yeah. And so now they're, like you said, they're afraid of that being turned on. They're afraid of that same magnifying glass they put on black women being put on them.
Mm-hmm.
Daquon, you better say that. Daquon, you better say that. So shifting to our last hot on the table this week is Jessie Nelson and the Nicki Minaj situation. So Jessie Nelson recently came under fire regarding an accusation of blackfishing in regard to her Boys debut single featuring Nicki Minaj. In the Bustle article written by Sophie McAvoy, she details the backlash of Nelson's defense. Nelson told Vulture magazine that she had a love for black music and black culture, saying, quote, "That's all I know. It's what I grew up on," she said. "I'm very aware that I'm a white British woman and I've never said that I wasn't." She added that she would never intentionally do anything to make herself look racially ambiguous. Now, Nicki Minaj also came to her defense, stating that there's a lot of women out here in the United States that tan, get bigger lips, and all types of shit done to themselves. I wear straight blonde hair down to my feet when I want to, contacts, whatever. I do whatever the fuck I want. As long as you're not hurting anybody or speaking negatively about anyone's race or culture, you should be able to enjoy your body, your makeup, how you want to. So, Daquon, that brings up the question here. Is there a difference between forced assimilation and cultural appropriation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, like, before I get into it, like, I'm not saying, Jessie Nelson is lying, but, like, this very white British woman being like, I just love Black culture. It's what I grew up with. And I'm like, in white England, where? Um, but I do think that there is this difference between forced assimilation and cultural appropriation. Like, it's one of those things that, like, yeah, sure, a lot of people of color, do things to have more Eurocentric features because that's
Yeah,
the beauty standard. And it's what they need to do to like survive in certain spaces.
yeah,
But that's completely different than like over tanning your skin and all of that. And it's like one of those things where it's like, don't you think it's a little weird that people are like using all of these different types of chemical sprays or going out in the sun, which and absorbing UV rays that like can cause cancer and being like, oh, I just want like that summer glow. Or it's we gotta address like it's weird, but also like regardless of what Nicki Minaj says about like it doesn't matter if like it's not hurting anybody. Like yes, it is hurting any people. It is hurting people because you are saying that your skin, your features are just like a form of entertainment. That it's only important when it's done by a white person. Box braids are only cool when it's done by a Kardashian.
yeah,
Afros are only cool when it's done by some white person. Like it
yeah.
is creating these really dangerous rhetorics that are dangerous and are harmful. Like, so it's not just like, oh, it's just hair, oh, it's just skin color, oh, it's just music. Like, it's much more than that.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely, I agree with everything you just said. I think that there's definitely a conversation here about forced stimulation because I'm like, blonde hair is not a culture. Let's start that there. Blue eyes are not a culture. They're just they're just a trait. Okay.
Which
Black
black people can have.
thank you. I was just about to say that. Bitch, we right here with it. Black people can have blonde hair and blue eyes naturally without bleach. Black people can have straight hair without a chemical relaxer. That all can be possible. So let's just stay. That's not a culture. That's not blonde hair and blue eyes is not a culture. Okay. It's just that it oftentimes is associated with whiteness, but whiteness itself is not a culture. Irish is a culture. There's Irish culture, there's German culture, there's British culture. There is not white culture. So let's start there first. I think that my problem here with this whole Jesse Nelson situation is like, isn't it funny how white people are the only race that wants to look darker? Like, isn't that kind of funny? How like
Right.
all other races are trying, unfortunately, to gain more Eurocentric look by being lighter, or the lighter skin is the more prettier one. But it seems that white people want to make themselves chemically darker.
Yeah, and it's weird because
It's
like
weird.
if some black person told you, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this like skin bleaching regimen," you'd be like, "No, like you're beautiful the way you are,
Yeah,
and like you don't have to do that to your body. Like it's dangerous, and all those chemicals are bad for you." But then a white person goes to a tanning bed like 3 times a month, and it's like,
yeah.
"Oh, look at you, like that girl. That tan is glowing your skin or whatever."
There's whole tanning salons, and it's like, what the freak? And it's just crazy how we have that. But I want to go back a little bit here on the fact that tanning, to me, and it's like it's weird how, because it's not just her tanning, it's multiple aspects that she does that come across as blackfishing. And this has been we talked about this before on the podcast before, but one of the things I think is really crazy is that we have this weird conversation where people think that black hair braids and dreads and excuse me, locks and afros are something that can be shared with other cultures. And the unfortunate fact is, and I heard a TikTok, somebody on TikTok said this, but I don't remember who it was. And I was trying to find it before we got to this episode, but I just couldn't find it. But what she said was something so thought-provoking, because she was like, the reason why we have such a problem with it and the reason why it's such a big issue is because Black people are still demonized for having those traits. Black people having dreads is still seen as a problem in white society. Afros are still seen as a problem in white society. Black girls having box braids, cornrows, any of those styles, protective styles that are so enriched in our culture and just date back generations. These things are still demonized in Black culture. So the reason why we tell white people not to do these things is not because we're saying, oh, you can't appreciate us, or you can't like that hairstyle. The facts are you are celebrated. You are celebrated for it. And we are demonized for it. And that is a problem. And this is what she said that I thought really resonated with me. Until we are able to be respected and celebrated for our culture outside of our culture, as in white society is like, hey, that's cool, that's all right, you can have locks, whatever, we cool, we accept you as you are. As soon as we get to a place where little Black girls and Black boys are not getting their hair cut off at school because they're not seen as presentable, until we have people going to work and not having to fear, oh, will they say something about my braids? Will they say something about my afro? Do I need to braid it down? Do I need to cut it off? Until we don't have to do that anymore, until we don't have to hide who we are as Black people anymore, we cannot share our culture with anyone else. It's just that fact. It's just that.
Period. And I think this is a point to bring up, because at the same time, like, white people know this, and that's like the point of it. Like I think even getting into like the song like Boys by Jessie Nelson, like she talks about, ooh, like I like a bad boy. I like them with tattoos and gold teeth, and like the hole that you dug should be criminal. And it's like you are literally taking aspects of Black culture and being like, oh, it's bad, it's criminal, and like you're like literally making those connections that demonizes Black people to this day. And like it's this whole thing that we see plenty of times when, you know, some girl wants to leave like their little girl group, or they want to leave like Disney Channel or Nickelodeon, so they go through their blackface to be rebellious, because obviously being Black is being rebellious and all of that stuff, and they use that as a way just to like get some relevance. Like, who was really checking for Jessie Nelson before this happened? Like, honestly, like I know she was a part of Lil Mix, but like I can't tell you a single Lil Mix song. I'm sorry. And I can't tell you I can't tell you a solo Jessie Nelson song after Lil Mix got disbanded or whatever. Like, it's one of those things, like she literally, like, I feel like she's literally using Blackness just for relevance.
And that's no shade. Listen, if you're a Little Mix fan, go off, girl. But I didn't know who the fuck she was until now. I didn't know who the fuck Jessie Nelson was until this particular moment. But it's crazy because when you think about it, it's like it almost feels performative in the sense that creating this controversy is going to have people who do agree that, oh, you should be, like, white people should be able to do what they want to do, going to listen to the song. Like, the Boys song is now, you know, people are going to want to know what it's about and want to hear her and want to get her. It's almost like a marketing ploy. And we've seen a lot of people go through a lot of white people go through their Black phase, like you said. And we've talked about this before on the show as well. And one thing that I really thought was another powerful thing this other TikToker said, I really wish I knew her name, y'all. I'm so sorry. But she said also that, and I think another big question, a bigger issue here, that a lot of times white people want to take all of the great things about Black culture, use it and take it into themselves while maintaining the protections of being white. And so it's not even appreciating and saying, I love Black culture. Like, I love blah, 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 blah. But it's like, but what are you doing to show that respect? How are you furthering the narrative to show that, hey, this should be normalized? You know what I'm saying? Are you bringing Black people up with you? Are you also bringing people into these spaces? Why do you feel the need to tend to a point where you do look ethnically ambiguous? And not saying, she's like, I never said, bitch, you don't, excuse me, let me rephrase, I'm not calling nobody a bitch. Sorry, that's how I talk, y'all. Let me clarify. But it's not about whether or not you said it. It doesn't matter what you say. Your actions speak louder than your words. And so, yeah, I'm not borrowing from Black culture. I love Black culture. I'm not trying to be racially ambiguous. Yet your hair is really, really trying to be curlier. Yet your skin tone is looking a little darker. Yet you're wearing certain styles that are oftentimes associated with Black women. Yet you are making yourself look almost the same shade as Nicki Minaj in the video. And it's just like, an actual Black woman. So it's just one of those things where it's like, if you look at that in the Ariana Grande's and the side to side video, where like, and that's both sides of it, where it's like the racism, whiteness being seen as the forefront and Blackness being seen as that. Because if we look at the video, the side to side video, Nicki Minaj and Ariana Grande look almost the same shade.
Literally.
Like, and it's crazy how people, and it's like, I think that even if, like I said, going back to that, even if Chelsea Nelson didn't say the words, I'm trying to look ethnically ambiguous. And let's just say, for argument's sake here, and playing devil's advocate here, let's just say that maybe she didn't know. Maybe she didn't really understand what she was doing. What I will say is that even if she's not doing it, it opens up the conversation about who her team is making her do.
Mm.
Her team is styling her in certain ways. Her team is probably suggesting that she go tan more, that she should wear curlier hair, that she should, wear certain clothing and certain aspects and say certain rap lyrics in case somebody might have put it in there. I don't know if she writes her own lyrics. Maybe somebody else wrote it like that because they want her to look more urban. They want her to appeal towards the urban community or the ethnic community. And it's just like, even if she's not doing it herself, giving her the benefit of the doubt here, even if she's not doing it, the problem is the system that promotes ethnically ambiguous, ethnic ambiguity. And so not just in the Jessie Nelsons, but in the Nicki Minaj and the Ariana Grandes and the Little Kims, showing that they look like they could be mixed or some kind of thing like that, that seems to be a problem. That's the problem here, is that they can't just be themselves because themselves is quote unquote not what's the standard. It's not what sells. Nicki Minaj looking up, not saying she's doing anything, but whatever. But Nicki Minaj's lighting crew and her makeup artist making her look brighter. That's a problem. And the same with Little Kim. Not saying, I don't know anything, allegedly speaking, I don't know what's going on with her in her life. But from what I can see is that we look at Little Kim back in the day and look at Little Kim now, she seems a lot brighter. And maybe it's just makeup, but even still, that's a problem. Right. The fact that they are painting her with makeup so much more brighter than her actual skin tone. And that they are making people who are white darker so that they look like they're ethnically ambiguous. Am I making sense here, Daquon? Am I making sense? You follow me?
And I think like even on the situation of like Lil Kim, like as somebody that like uses makeup and like understands it, like there's a difference between like, you just like got the wrong shade or, you added too much, because like there's some translucent powders that will give you such a flashback to where you look like Boo the Ghost. Like I understand, like there are some things, like I've even had times when like after I painted myself and like I used a little too much powder and I'm like, ooh, I look ghastly. But like to consistently look like you are a completely different race, there has to be something going on there. And like I 100% agree. And I think like, can we bring back season 1, Appreciate from a Distance? Like if you are truly just like into Black culture and everything like that, like appreciate from a distance. Like you can love Black culture, but that does not give you a right or need to engage in it.
Exactly. And I think that is just such a powerful thing. I think that the reality is, in the situation, these women, I'm not going to put it on them because we all know about society and how they treat women. I want the conversation to be around their team, the people who are putting these things in their regard, the people who are painting their makeup and doing their makeup. Some of the cases writing their lyrics, some of the cases styling them and stuff like that. This is the larger issue here that was institutionalized by white male cis people. And so white male cis people want Black women to look more white and want white women to look more ethically ambiguous. And that's the facts. And we need to dismantle that so that Black women and white women and all people and all women and all people can be who they are and not have to fit into some other standard of what beauty's supposed to be and what you need to look like in order to be that. Let them look like they supposed to. Enhance their beauty. Don't create a whole new fucking skin tone. But that's the conversation for another day. So many children grow up never knowing the full scope of what their culture has contributed to society and history. So it's time for a change. Let's take a pause, rewind, and remind the world just how we did that. In an article written by Pamela M., we learn about Annie Turnbow Malone. Many have heard about the famous businesswoman, Madam C.J. Walker, but fewer remember the woman that she used to work for as an agent. You see, Annie Turnbow Malone actually studied chemistry in school, but was forced to leave because of an illness. She took an avid interest in hair care and using her knowledge of chemistry, created her own line of non-damaging hair care products for African-American women. By the 1920s, she was a multi-millionaire and a noted philanthropist.
Black women.
Period.
It's one of those things that, like, I'm glad you brought this up, because I do think that, like, in history, especially Black history, we kind of get, like, focused on certain figures, but, you know, we don't focus on, like, a lot of other figures. And so it's just like, oh, we'll talk about Black history, and it's like, oh, y'all have Madam C.J. Walker. We don't need to talk about it anymore. But it's like, there's so many people that are getting left and erased out of history, especially Black women, especially Black queer people. And so I think that this is a really important time to really bring back their stories to life.
Exactly. And the fact that we only know about Madam C.J. Walker in that aspect, and we didn't, even in the TV show, they painted Annie out to be a villain. And it's kind of like, okay, that's not the actual Annie Malone. And so it kind of created that weird narrative there, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But it's definitely reality of bringing that to the spotlight. It's definitely about seeing these people who are footnotes, apparently, but that have had such as almost equally as massive of an impact as the more prominent figures.
Right. And so moving on, I recently was looking at Because of Them We Can, and there was this article about how Barbados just named a Black woman as its first president after severing ties with the British monarchy. So Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley nominated Dame Sandra Mason to be Barbados' first president as an independent republic during August's live address to the nation. Mason was the current acting governor general and a graduate of the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus, Barbados, and the Hugh Wooding Law School. She made history as the first Bajan woman to graduate from a Trinidadian law school. So,
again, Black women.
Right.
But yes, that is absolutely amazing. Like, it's so good to hear that, and we're starting to see more movement and more traction in that regard, to showcasing the power of Black women and the effect that they have on our community, and we're starting to see them more in the forefront than we did it ever before. So I hope this traction keeps going.
Right. Maybe the U.S. can follow with their first Black woman president.
Maybe. So, as always, thank you all so much for watching, and keep the conversation going down in the comment box below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you're listening to us on our podcast, please rate and review us on whatever platform you're using. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Melanin Margin. Now, if you want to follow us on our social media handles, my handle is at Andre Talks a Lot, and Daquon's is at Daquon950. You can also follow our podcast on Instagram, at The Melanin Margin, for updates of new content. Now, we'll see you all next week on The Melanin Margin, where our goal is always to bring the marginalized to the spotlight in any way we can. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.